Good morning, everybody. I am Elise as Another Truth here on YouTube. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. I do appreciate the time that you have taken out of your busy day or quiet morning to listen to something that I have to say. Today I will be talking about my trials and tribulations with having borderline personality disorder, as well as relaying some educative understanding about it. So if this type of content triggers you, feel free to find another video that is less triggering for you, that is more enriching and more educative. I do not want you to be here against your consent on any level, as ongoing consent is very important to me in this channel. I know that the holidays must be tough for a lot of you. It's difficult when you're enduring grief, illness, struggle, and feeling compelled to keep up with the marketing idea of Christmas or of the holidays in general. In my opinion, and I only speak from my opinion because I am not a professional in this arena, but you don't have to pressure yourself to give yourself and your family the Christmas that you see in the commercials. You're not less of a human being or less of a parent because you can't get everything that your child wants for Christmas. You're not less of a human being because you don't have a companion to share with on this holiday. You as an individual are important, wonderful, and valid even if you live on your own. And you're celebrating in your own way or not celebrating. I want you to take this time to cherish yourself, to cherish your lives, because you are all worth it. No matter what anybody else says, no matter what TV commercials say or TV shows say, or what even your friends say, or what looks like on social media, you don't have to give in to that. That's one part or two parts of communication that you can easily put away. A lot of it is fiction anyway. Treat it as an entertainment value, but not a value by which you live your life, because your life is important as it is. I'm not the type of person who believes in Christmas miracles or necessarily the spirit of Christmas. I think that for me, I don't know, it's weird how I feel because I feel like life is a celebration all of the time. To be here one more day, at least for me, is special and important. Now, my own experience has been very medically depressed moods where I didn't feel like I was worth it, or there isn't any point of doing this, or having those kinds of thoughts and thinking where the end might be a better option. And yet I feel this hope, the celebration of life, a celebration of saying, yeah, I'm here, I matter. I do feel both things at times. It's part of my thinking process. It's part of my ability to think through things, to process things. I find it confusing sometimes because I feel like a major exit from this world would be a better option sometimes. Because of the state of my mind and my thinking process. I used to just think it was part of a bad thought process, and it is, but I think it's a greater feeling, more connected to the way that I see the world, the way that the world has treated me, the way that I have treated the world, and there is a lot of guilt and sorrow in that. At the same time, there's like this inner determination just to exist anyway, and not to piss anybody off, not to annoy people, but to keep pressing on that I'm worth it. And that's a mantra I want to stick to. Now, mental illness is not only just a disorder or illness of the mind, it also affects movement. It puts your physical health in danger. Sometimes physical illness does cause mental illness. To think that the two aren't connected is ridiculous, in my unprofessional opinion. There were a number of risks associated with borderline personality disorder. Now, I have comorbid illnesses like bipolar 2. I have panic disorder, anxiety, etc. I've discussed these before. I won't go down the whole list. These are all diagnosed illnesses because of the symptoms I present. These don't identify me as a human being as a whole. I'm still a human being with character, with care, with interests. And even being in a world where nobody listens to me, appreciates me, or I feel that way, and this is not trauma fishing, this is just sometimes the state of my mind, I still press on. I still want to teach myself things. I still want to learn things. I still want to be a part of this world. And even now that I don't attention seek the way that I used to, I realize at the end of the day, I need to give myself that attention and myself that love. Because relying on the attention and love of others, it's often very disappointing. If somebody's willing to give that and I choose to accept it, it's a gift and it's a privilege. But it's a gift to have that love. It's something someone is giving me. It needs to be cherished. It deserves to be cherished. And so that's why I'm not in a rush to find a life partner or a companion, or even establish stronger or more friendships at this point. Because I don't know if I can do that. I need to concentrate on the friends that I have and repair my relationship with my children, although I'm very close with my children. And I love them more than I love myself, and that's true. But I have to love myself, and I have to live for myself. It's not healthy to live for others, and we don't live for ourselves to some extent. We don't look for our own personal worth. Having self-worth has a lot to do with us being able to cope with things, being able to move on, move on from stuff, and not move on to forget, but to do other things. You know, one of the things that I learned about myself, and I think a lot of my people in my generation do this, but I will speak from my own experience, is nostalgia. I find living in the past in general very troubling. Now, I used to just live in the past, and it wasn't always a good situation at all. I don't believe there were good old days. I don't believe that. I believe that we are progressing as a species. We are becoming more aware. We are growing from the things that don't work. A lot of people are resistant, seemingly, to accountability, but I see all of us, at least the people around me and myself, taking more accountability. And it's not just a passing phase or a fad, it's something important to do. And there wasn't a lot of accountability in my generation. It wasn't a focus of life that seemed to be important. They always talked about responsibility, but there was it's sort of like a narrow list. Sometimes being responsible means being accountable for the things that we say, for the things that we do. Now, we may not always say what we're accountable for, what we need to take responsibility for. This is a one-dimensional form of communication. And it's one that doesn't require us to reveal a lot of ourselves. But I will tell you that I'm working through that myself in great detail, and I am appreciative of this process of my life. Because at the end of the day, I'll become less defensive. I mean, I'm a lot less defensive than I used to be, a lot less. I just let people say what they have to say. Sometimes, though, there are people I won't listen to, but if somebody needs to address something with me, I'll let them say it, because they have a right to express their experience with me. And I don't always have to agree with it. It may not always be right. But, I mean, especially if it comes from my children, I absolutely owe them my ear and my attention. Because I don't want them to be in life where, like me, feeling like no one was accountable for what they had done to me. I will never have that opportunity of someone apologizing to me for the abuse that they caused me, or for the mean things that they caused me. If anything, I've encountered excuses as to why people wouldn't do that. I can hold them accountable, but I can't expect them to be accountable. But I don't want my children to go through that with anything that I've said that has hurt them, or anything that I've done. If I weren't there for them, I don't want them to have that life. I don't want them to have that sense of loneliness and anger that I feel on an everyday basis, of not being able to tell the people who I trusted, who betrayed that trust, what they had done and what the consequences were of that. So, again, the idea of nostalgia, and when I actually physically go back in that time through television shows, music, news, and everything, there were people trying to tell the truth. There was always truth tellers in your Renaissance paintings, in your early radio, TV shows, almost cryptic messages of things that go on. But overall, the old adages that you see in memes that, you know, you survived what didn't kill you and so on, which really made, I'm saying that in other words, which really makes the excuse that whatever you suffer through cannot be as bad as not surviving it or something like that. But the fact of the matter is that level of abuse and neglect and ignorance does hurt. It hurts for a lifetime. I think the fact that children still have fewer rights than adults. They're only seen as partially a human being. Although there are some political and social movements that insist that they are important, but at the end of the day, they don't fight for the rights of children. They don't fight for the rights of children to challenge their parents on bad parenting. They don't want children to hold their parents accountable for past neglect, abuse, or even a few bad words that were said that were harmful and demeaning to them. They don't want children to grow up feeling safe from predators. They don't want children to appreciate the value of an academic education or the value of a trade, getting a trade on top of it, and things like that. I mean, it's amazing to me how much children are so horribly neglected in society. And I mean societal neglect, and it's worse for children of color, children with mental health and physical challenges, and so on. But you always see, at least I always see the meme, and maybe I should change my algorithms a bit, but we played outside until the street lights turned on. Yeah, but predators were lurking even during the day. You know, people are talking about their childhood like they had this perfect childhood. But there were predators looking at me, approaching me. One even got to me, and it was out in the middle of the day. To say that that was a good part of childhood as a generation, speaking for a generation, is absolutely ridiculous, because it wasn't always safe. And we weren't talking openly about these things, not like today. So I would hold on to things of my past. I would hold on to what was good. But then if I were really to examine it, and I really started facing the trauma that I experienced, I realized it was horrible. It was horrifying. if you look at things from that perspective, through your own experiences, of course, but things that were going on in society, it was horrifying. Just the level of ignorance is traumatizing alone. My parents knew better. They were educated. I just don't know where they failed as human beings. Failed as parents. I shouldn't say failed as human beings, because that's not right to say. It's my feeling, but it's not the right thing to say. That, but so I don't, I mean, my childhood was definitely shaded by trauma and abuse, neglect, and with absolutely no emotional support whatsoever. To go from that to being able to find emotional resources within myself is pretty amazing. For me. I'm only speaking about my experience here. So my ability to cut through the negative thoughts, the circling thoughts that they don't go anywhere. The thoughts of I have where I'm self-deprecating myself. That type of resiliency, resiliency, it's implied that people would be able to spring back from these things. I would never really spring back from anything. But I can find resolve in myself. I can move through these feelings. And I do move through them. It's not an act of defiance. Because I have a right to be here, won't be in this world. Maybe it's not a right codified in the Constitution, but I have to tell this to myself because it's important for me to feel that worth, because with borderline personality disorder, there is this overwhelming sense of worthlessness. Interestingly, I am referred to a lot of things that I am narcissistic, a narcissist, and different variations of the term itself, or ideas that I'm self-absorbed. I think that's very dismissive, to be honest with you. I think that it means that the experiences, the trauma that I endured that contributed to this disorder and this disorder of thinking and existing and doing is somehow predicated on a foundation of selfishness. That's not true at all, at least in my case. If we were to look at the facts, narcissism is not a feature of borderline personality disorder, although I think I have read somewhere where it said that there are people with borderline personality disorder that also have narcissistic personality disorder. I'm not here to demean people with narcissistic personality disorder, because there are a lot of things that someone with borderline and with NPD have a lot in common. And that is the sense of needing validation through attention seeking. And there are other things that are with that. But I am of the 60%. Now, 40% of people, like I said, with borderline have been diagnosed with NPD. we can take that with a grain of salt. Just because people are misdiagnosed all the time. But narcissism is not a feature of borderline. I do not, the difference between me and someone with narcissistic personality might be more openly attention seek or angry. Their expression is more external. Their attention seeking is different than mine. I internalize my anger. I internalize my self-loathing. I don't project it as much onto others. Now, I'm speaking from my opinion and perspective. I'm not a professional. Again, do your research. This is not to demean someone with NPD or narcissistic personality disorder. I think personality disorders are heavily stigmatized and such prevent people from seeking help and living in eternal shame, which is something like someone like me cannot live life doing, because I was on a steady decline, because I was so ashamed of myself. I knew from a long time ago I had borderline. I knew it, and people weren't sure. People weren't ready to do that because it's not, they say it's not officially a diagnosis, but much like my much like my bipolar 2 diagnosis, borderline personality disorder does come with some health risks. I mean, it almost matches bipolar disorder. For me, there are stark differences in having bipolar 2 and borderline personality disorder. I mean, definitely the mood disorder itself is common between the two. Emotional dysregulation, mood swings, suicidality. Suicide, I think, is higher in people with bipolar 2 than over people with schizophrenia, but I could be mistaken. That's just something that I read along the way. So we have a higher rate of suicide. I also have borderline, and suicide is another complication of borderline that's very similar. But the other similar connecting risks are heart disease, obesity, and there was one other thing and I cannot remember. Definitely bodily pain. And I think because we go up and down so much in our moods, I mean, it affects our body. I have been examined by a doctor, and I've gone through a battery of tests. So far, there doesn't, other than having brain dysfunction, I'm physically more or less in good shape. And I don't have any autoimmune disorder or anything like that that is contributing to my mental health. I know since I had my gallbladder removed, a lot of the problems that I was having are no more. And that relieved me, that gave me a lot of stress release. I mean, it was instant relief, of course. So I correlate that with, or I connect that with health, because the difficulty I had, I always had gallbladder problems, but it got worse as I got older. And mostly, I think more women get their gallbladder out after 40 than anything. I mean, and then when I'm looking for my postmenopausal life, because the hormone influxes that I've had have also exacerbated my mental health issues. So I'm looking for a more peaceful life after that stage as well. So there are like physical components that exacerbate mental health, but also contribute to mental health. But definitely my borderline and bipolar come with their own set of physical and mental health risks. It didn't dawn on me that I would be more prone to heart disease with borderline. So it's essential for me, between the social and emotional risks of borderline, the exhaustion, the circling feelings and recycled feelings of hate, self-hate, self-deprecation. That can be I would feel dizzy a lot just having these profound mental illnesses. I would be dizzy a lot. I wouldn't be able to go outside. I mean, I'm agoraphobic, but because I would fall, I wouldn't be paying attention to things because I was so low functioning at that point of my life a few years ago. But now I'm able, because I'm on medication, I've had therapy, I'm lucky I have medical access to things. I've been able to take care of a number of physical issues going on that I've been on my physical health is improving because my mental health is also improving. But to go back to the narcissism, one of the risks that I read of borderline personality disorder is it's not necessarily narcissism, but it's also we're more inclined to develop antisocial personality disorder. And I really think that I was so low functioning and I was so isolated a few years ago. I was heading toward that. If I was not, I don't have that diagnosis. There's no reason to think that I have it. But sometimes in borderline, there are antisocial traits that come through. Although I haven't seen any research yet from my layman's perspective that would indicate to me that antisocial behavior, that antisocial traits part of borderline. And I've got to be careful with labels, and I've got to be careful how I'm examining myself because I'm not a professional. But I knew that, my mood disorders are a mental and physical problem for me. Luckily, I don't have heart disease. There's no evidence that I have any cardiovascular problems. I have asthma, but it's under control because of medication. Even my breathing is better because I'm getting specialized physical therapy, and I have access to medication, good therapy, and routines. How you might ask how that helps with breathing. Well, it's just something that I practice because I noticed I always associated doing routines with afraid of. I'm going to give a trigger warning because there's a fear of illnesses that I'm about to discuss. That I always feared of dropping dead or not catching my breath. That's just fear of the disorganized thinking. And it's a pattern I established. So when I started to learn to breathe properly, I started to practice my breathing, establishing my routines. So now when I do my routines, I don't get into a coughing fit. I don't have sudden anxiety as much because I'm breathing properly. I have control of myself. I can do my day-to-day activities, so I may get up even as early as this, I'm not inclined to go back to bed. I might have a quick nap. I might prepare for a day where I do go to bed at a reasonable hour and wake up at a reasonable hour. But as I'm aging, it's a little more difficult to have sound sleep, and I have to do things in the day. I have to modify my day where I'm getting some kind of rest during the day. I have to treat that part of my life with respect. So, like I said, I started off with making my bed, because making bed, bedrooms are private, beds are personal space, and that personal space should be treated with respect. Now, not everybody can do it. People need help, need to have the help of someone to make the bed. That's fine. And you don't have to make your bed. You don't have to make your bed if you don't want to. I just established it because I want my personal space. If nothing else in the house gets done, I want to know my bed is made and that my pillows are fluffed. Because I always think that, well, what if I need a nap? What if I need to, what if I'm feeling anxiety? I need to go in my room for a little while. I don't want to enter in chaos. And plus, I like having my sheets tucked in. And yes, I use a flat sheet as well as a regular sheet. I like sleeping in between sheets. It's just fresher, and it keeps my other blankets I pile on a little fresher. And I change the sheets frequently, because having clean sheets gives me a sense of accomplishment. I feel good. I wake up fresh. I don't wake up feeling unclean or unkempt. That's just how I approach it. Plus, I have a cat, so changing things regularly and cleaning things regularly is paramount to healthy indoor lives. And then my other routine is taking care of my cat and making sure that his litter box is sifted through every day and he gets a clean box regularly. And I clean his dishes for his wet food, dry food, his water, and his water fountain. And making sure that his eating area is clean. And I brush him routinely because he has longish hair. And it makes him feel good. It's therapeutic. I brush him very gently. He didn't like it at first, but it's necessary to do it because it also prevents like hairballs from forming and making him sick. So I brush him regularly, and I check him every now and then, make sure, his skin is good, his paws are good, and so on. But those are routines I've established. Caring for an animal is very good for somebody with borderline if routines are established, because it's healing for us, and it gives us a sense of responsibility and accomplishment in caring for someone else other than ourselves. But it is very healing. Having the love and trust of an animal is very special. And I don't look at my cat as just my animal. He's like my third child. And he didn't ask to be adopted by me. He didn't ask to be in my house. So he deserves pampering. He deserves to be treated with respect for his species, for his life. So I learn stuff about taking care of cats every day. And I learned that, he doesn't like to be picked up a lot. He's not a lap cat. I'd love a lap cat. But you know what? He has his own space and I have my own. Although he shares my furniture with me, I don't pick him up as much. Sometimes I do. Sometimes he's just so cute. and I give him smooches, and he likes that, but not all the time. He doesn't. He needs to feel like he's grounded. That's important for a cat, and I understand that. Cats need to feel their grounding. They need to feel their own stability. Being picked up sometimes for them takes away from that if I do that too much. And it's kind of allegoric for my own sense of stability. I mean, respecting those boundaries, but having my own footing, having my own stability, so to speak, is very important for my day-to-day living. So where I see that in his, I see it in mine. Now that's cognitive empathy. I think that's an example of cognitive empathy, which they say borderlines kind of lack. They don't lack the emotional empathy. Now, I don't believe, no, let me back that up. Now, emotional empathy, you understand the feelings of others. That's what they say. I don't think that's appropriate wording. I don't know. I think having empathy isn't all what it's cracked up to be, so to speak. I think that a lot of us conflate empathy with actually caring. Sometimes I don't want to know what people are thinking. I can't possibly know what people are thinking. The borderline person may be more in tune with that, but I don't know. I feel like that's a breach of privacy. Like, I know when someone's pissed off with me. I know when someone's not happy with me. I may not know why, but I know. I just feel it. I feel when someone is not either pleased with me or I just know it. Instinctively, I know it. But what I stopped doing is I've stopped asking, are you angry with me or so on. I feel like, because I don't know. I mean, I won't know if they're actually angry with me and what reason. Maybe they're just pissed off and I remind them of someone they ate for that day. I don't know unless they tell me. So the whole idea is like not to be defensive when they approach me. And I don't really have a right to know how they feel about me unless they give me permission and let me know. It's good to listen to instincts though. It's good to listen to that. I don't second guess myself anymore. I instinctively know now when to back off, when to proceed. There's certain that I'm navigating a lot better. I could be wrong, but I'm navigating. As I'm getting healthier, I'm starting to see the importance of boundaries, what I'm responsible for, what I'm not responsible for. And as a person with borderline, I am not a punching bag. I am not the reason for the world's failings. I may socially contribute to that as a collective. I may personally do that, and I will hold myself accountable, but I will not hold myself accountable for everybody's feelings on me. So withdrawing that level of hyper empathy and putting it to a minimum involves me less in trying to be a sleuth and figure out what people are thinking, because I don't need to know what they're thinking. I can't possibly know. I may have, like I said, I pick up on things easier. I pick up on things very easily. I do self-reflect, but I can't possibly know unless someone tells me. And even then, might be their experience or their perspective. It doesn't necessarily mean it applies to me. I'm not going to take accountability for things I don't need to be accountable for. But I can be accountable for myself 100% all the time, right? So, yeah, I think that you can understand have respect for other people's boundaries and feelings and space and things like that. That's a good use of empathy. That's a good use of caring. It's a good way of caring about someone else and understanding. And separating myself from relationships that aren't there, when there isn't a good exchange of energy and care. That's important. Developing new ones based on those things is a good move, I think. At least that's been my experience. Now, me formulating new friendships, it's probably not, I plan to do that, but it takes a long time. It's not something that I am actively doing at this point. I don't need to go out of my way to get people to like me. All I need to do, all my responsibility is to be a part of the community, to be seen. And I can do that by talking to people, talking to community members, getting involved. Recently, I went to the grand opening of our tram extension line. We opened several new stations in our communities in my city. And it has its pros and cons. For me, it's a convenience because I have such anxiety on conveyances, jumping from one conveyance to another. Although it's becoming a little easier, it's still very difficult. So I can just walk to the station and take the tram into Boston without an issue. And I'm more inclined to ride the tram. I feel like it's a little safer than, say, some of the underground trains. Our train service in this state, while I love our bus operators and train operators, they are amazing. They're wonderful. It's the MBTA is so poorly mismanaged that there have been a number of train fires. People were jumping into the Mystic River because the train caught fire on a bridge and people were trying to get out. There were no safety methods going over that bridge, and you have these old trains that are not really maintained well. They're not serviced well, and we've had so many problems with the new trains because of where they're built. They were fraught with problems and putting people at risk. And there were some unfortunate train operator related deaths on here because of negligence or bad signaling or whatever. There have been some horrible things. So I don't really trust it. But anyway, with the new, they call it the GLX, the Green Line extension, I will be posting a video of my own perspective of that very shortly. But the GLX extension has its cons, and it means that people in the area along the line, now that it's open, a lot of people are losing stable housing because the landlords have jacked up the rent because of the cost of I don't know if either maintaining the home or the landlords are greedy. I don't know. But people are being displaced, and That includes people who are immigrants who built this city, built this community, people of color, people with lower income. They're priced out of that. So they're forced to live in areas where there are transportation, deserts, among other things. It takes people longer to get to work. It's more time away from family, more time of having convenience and pleasure of just coming home from a work day easily and transitioning to home life. It's rough, and it's going to have its consequences at some point. So there was a protest on the day of opening, and I was hoping for a ribbon-cutting ceremony like they did at Leechmere Station. I was at the Medford Tufts line on the GLX, on the Green Line extension. And, all the dignitaries, to me, they're worthless. They're worthless, but that's another story. Their position in running these things is worthless. Not them as individuals, but you know what I'm talking about. So I have a video up where you should see that the ribbon cutting ceremony was more community-faced, so members of the community could actually see that. But there was no ribbon cutting ceremony at the station like there was at Leechmere. Like, where's the ribbon? Because this is for all of us to see. But no, they waited until the governor cut the ribbon. I mean, he also did that. I think he also did that at the opening of Leechmere, if I remember. I think I have a personal video of that. I should show that. But I don't want to show that because I can't stand our governor. But the fact of the matter is there wasn't one for the community. This is about community. This isn't about the governor. This isn't about our senators. Our senators we voted for. But there was a protest by a community organization. And, at that point I made a choice. Am I going to listen to the governor and all of these dignitaries pat their backs? And some of these people I voted for. Or am I going to protest the housing injustice? Of course I'm going to help. These people don't know me. I joined right in. I don't care. Where am I supposed to go? I wasn't part of this agency, but I just went right into the protest because I understand what's going on. I wanted to be a part of that. And other members of the community started, tacking on to this protest. And so there were some Tufts University students. There was this community agency, which is amazing agency. I'm hoping I can get a volunteer position at least to help, because what's the point of feeling and understanding these situations and seeing it and feeling helpless, I guess, but participating makes a difference, right? So if I've inquired about that because I'm like, oh, wow, well, let me try this. But other members of the community just were in there chanting with us. It was amazing. So anyway, using those skills to talk to people, to understand, that's participating. I don't have to be personally involved with any of these people, but we can work for a common goal. That's part of community. That's something that I am relearning the value of. I used to do this for a living a long time ago. And I lost my way. Well, of course I traveled, and I didn't want to stay doing the same thing all the time. I was burnt out, but I was burnt out because I had other things going on, but now I have all the time in the world. Well, not all the time in the world, but I have time to offer. Why not, right? Getting involved is important, and that's a healthy way to be recognized. It's a healthy way to feel good about oneself. People with borderline are not obligated to participate in organizations or even volunteering their time or helping others. I mean, to me, a priority would be to help oneself, to help the development of oneself so they feel self-confident. Okay. But there's this expectation that people with mental illness owe the community a debt, and we don't. We didn't get a lot of support from the community, let's say, when things were happening to us and people weren't advocating for us. We didn't cause our trauma. We didn't cause our brains to become disordered. So no, there's no obligation to do that. I mean, volunteer work isn't an obligation. It's a gift. But it's also important to keep communities equitable. That's something to think about. That's something that I think about. So that's one avenue of participation, which is healthy for someone like me, because a lot of us with BPD see injustices all the time. Not just the injustices on ourselves, but the injustices on others. We become quickly angry because we feel that helplessness, but that is such a detriment to our health that having a constructive outlet for that is important. So with that thinking now, and from where I was so low functioning, it's such a drastic change for me. It only took a few years to get to this point, but that's a testament to accessible mental health therapy that's relatable to my circumstances. That should be the case for everybody. That should be the case for everybody. You shouldn't just have a hotline. You shouldn't just have the very, very basic. You should have more than that, more support, more care, more understanding. To go back to that housing protest, do you think any of those politicians cared about this housing protest? Because I came a little bit later in the protest because I was kind of stuck in the crowd where the governor was doing the ribbon cutting kind of away from the face of the rest of the community on that platform, which is ridiculous and stupid anyway. They should have had a worker do that, because the workers who built the stations are the one that should be opening the stations, not some dumb governor. But not one of those politicians we voted for gave a nod. Because I asked the people, like I said, I came later on in the protest. I asked the members of the agency, did they shake your hand? Did they look into your eyes? My indication was that if they did look at them, it was because they were informed to do so. I mean, even the mayor of my city, I mean, she's so far disassociated from the needs of her own community member. It's pathetic, and she's a Democrat. I sincerely hope that the other person I wanted to be a mayor because he understood more about disability justice. He even talked about disability justice and his plans for that. This mayor of ours doesn't, never has, doesn't even include it in her op-eds or anything. It's ridiculous. It's like, you can fool the public, but don't fool me, because I know all the nonsense. But that's just par for the course with politicians, isn't it? So I guess if I want to see change, I need to do it myself. And I need to do it with a reliable community agency that's notable for their grass work, that's equitable. That's it. That's all I can do at this point. Because other than that, I'm essentially powerless. But I do have a meaningful vote. I am a meaningful person of society. I may not be prominent. I may not be paid attention to. Nobody really listens to me. But my presence alone, my continual work as an individual contributing to a collective, being part of a collective will matter. And that's good enough for me. So I don't have any advice about that other than to get more active in your communities. Because action speaks more than feeling gut punched when you see someone homeless in the street. Well, then fucking do something about it. Do something about it. Don't just sit there and say, well, they could have given that to someone who's homeless. But I don't see a lot of people doing much for people who are homeless. And whenever people try to do anything for people who are homeless, they're vilified, they're jailed, they're arrested. This is disgusting thought process. We shouldn't even give food to people who are homeless, which is outrageous. There might be some public health concerns around that. But if people who are homeless can't be in a shelter, shelters are volatile for a lot of people. And people have mental illness, it's even harder. I wouldn't want to stay in a shelter if I was going to be attacked or the only things that I had, my only life possessions were taken away from me in a shelter, feeling a threat all the time. It's better to be on the move than be somewhere where I'm going to be attacked. I can't even imagine. Where's the empathy in that? Where's the care of that? These people that talk about empathy are full of crap. They don't actually do anything. They do the opposite. They give in to the status quo. So, listen, I'm left-wing. I'm a left-wing Democrat. I'm certainly in the wrong party. It's easy for me to point fingers at other people and not point fingers at myself, but I'm always going to see how I contribute to this, and I'm not going to speak highly of my party because I've seen firsthand that we're not all on board for the same vision of our community, of our world. Definitely not. Definitely not. I live in one of the most progressive cities in the United States, supposedly, or at least in the region anyway. Progressive. Progressive is a nasty word because progressive just means that it's more performative than anything. Progressives here keep up the status quo. They want to keep people that are young, able-bodied, and progressive into one group, and everybody else can go and fuck themselves because that's their attitude. Come on. Come on. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's like keeping up white supremacy and masking it with a liberal point of view. But you know what? There are liberals who are not so liberal when it comes to other people. There are liberals who talk about equity, but they don't really want that because their privilege would be challenged in many respects. And they don't want that. They want the comfort of living a certain type of life and not ever be held accountable for anything that they say or do. They're not any better than anybody we accuse of being that way, to be honest with you. So, this was meant to be about my feelings as a person with borderline. But as a person with borderline, I have perspectives on other things outside of my own feelings and mental health status. I do have greater interests. I do have greater concerns other than myself. Although I do hold on to the importance of accountability. Doesn't mean I'm good at it. Doesn't mean I'm always going to get it right. That's not an excuse for poor behavior or anything like that. I'm just saying that I'm not going to speak from a self-made pulpit and tell everybody else how to live. You live how you feel is right. I'm just giving my experiences and perspectives on things and what I see. So, going back to borderline, having borderline. So yeah, we when we think about I can't even understand how a person with MPD might be feeling. I mean, I might have some of that cognitive empathy. I don't have that acuity, but I do have a little understanding because we share some of the same traits. There's them and then there's me. I mean, we share some of the same traits, and as far as needing validation and attention seeking, how we go about it is quite different in some respects. But I don't have narcissism and I don't have NPD. I'm open to any suggestion that I might be through behavior. I do self-analyze. I do ask questions in my therapy sessions and how I can do to work through that. But my doctor warns me of labeling myself, and because she really wants me just to focus on my wellness rather than my self-segregation from the rest of the world, because I have these labels attached to my diagnosis, to my symptoms, I mean. And to me, that's the hallmark of a great therapist, because then it allows me to take more responsibility for myself and hold myself more accountable and become a whole person. And when I say whole or holistic, I'm not saying not everybody can integrate. Not everybody is willing to integrate or become whole. I respect that. I was just thinking of people. I was just having a conversation with another friend of mine who is a therapist. She is my neighbor. We're talking about dissociative identity disorder. And I did an interesting art critique on someone with on someone's artwork. It was one of her other identities, her personality, that did a piece of work. I did an analysis of it for a project for my disability justice class. And, this artist, the original artist, I think all of her personalities are artists. They have the connection to her original personality, her original self, that they've all taken on the identity of the gift of art to express their pocket of pain to help the original identity, the original personality, original person to cope. And I may not be using those words correctly. I'm not a therapist, but it was just really fascinating. I looked at this woman's art. I should put her art in the link. It's triggering. A lot of it's triggering. Now, I'm not an art major. I'm not an artist by any stretch of the word, but her art is really powerful, and it really expresses different pockets of her experiences in life. And she doesn't want to integrate her personalities. That I think that was clear in an interview. Some people don't want to integrate. It's because the reason why why these are developed, it's developed out of survival of severe trauma, of horrible trauma. Some people who experience especially sexual abuse do develop other personalities. They do develop other egos to help them carry the burden of the trauma. And it's not a fake mental illness. It's not a fake occurrence. It's actually, for people, this is real. I mean, when people mock people with DID or dissociative identity disorder, it pisses me off. Seen a number of YouTubers do that. No. Faking it is not the same as actually experiencing that and having to go through that. Not everybody may recognize that they're going through it. Some people say they have pockets of time they can't account for. Sometimes crimes are committed. I think that in some cases where crimes are committed or some things happen, when people say they have a blackout, it's not really a blackout, it's just a loss of time because their consciousness switched to another personality. That does happen. That's something to be looked into. But I don't appreciate people faking symptoms for attention. I know some people do that because they have a mental illness of another kind. So they tend to adapt to other people's suffering and make it their own. I mean, that's a challenge that needs to be worked on. But there are people who do it who don't have anything going on. That pisses me off because it takes away from people who have these problems or these challenges, this illness. So, what else? So just kind of to recap what I said. So, like I said, narcissism is not a feature of borderline personality disorder. It's quite possible that somebody with borderline will develop antisocial behavior at some point. Sometimes some of the behavior that's present in borderline is antisocial. But antisocial personality disorder is a separate diagnosis, separate criteria, separate everything. But narcissism isn't quite a feature, but there are people with borderline who also have narcissism, much in the way that some people who have borderline might develop antisocial personality disorder if left untreated. And to be honest, I think I can't speak for people with NPD because I can't possibly know what they're going through. A lot of people with narcissistic personality disorder talk about their experiences with having it and the behaviors they do demonstrate from having it. And they do that on their own. They do it very, very well. And I don't necessarily feel manipulated when they speak of their experiences because, I don't see people as narcissists as just narcissists. I see them as a whole person. Now, borderlines might be endangered by a low-functioning person with NPD or a low-functioning narcissistic personality disorder. There's that risk because, like I said, people with borderline, we don't just easily manipulate it. We can be easily manipulated ourselves. I think people don't want to discuss that. We are gullible sometimes. Because we get attention. So attention-seeking behavior begets attention-seeking behavior sometimes. But I'm not, people throw that around. There are a lot of people with that. There are a lot of people with antisocial behavior. They have sociopathy. And even that, if they're low functioning, they're going to be acting from that primal level of their illness in the way that they associate with other people. And I have to believe there are a lot of those low functioning ones in politics today. It's weird, like when you have a personality disorder, you kind of recognize those symptoms in other people, but you don't. You can't make a diagnosis because you're not a professional, but you can see it. I saw a lot of certain things in Katie Joy when I used to do the videos about her. I just stopped doing the videos about her because it was just unfair and toxic, and it was especially toxic for me to be doing that. I think just being myself and focusing on my own behavior is valid enough. It's important enough, even if nobody listens to me. And personally, I think it was wrong for me to do that. Yeah, it's one thing to point out someone's bad behavior. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's important to address. But to assume that she had certain things, believe me, there's some glaring things that I could relate to, but that wasn't right for me to necessarily do because mental illness is stigmatized enough. I don't need to add to that. Anyway, I have spoken long enough. I hope I didn't bore you, but if I did, oh well. It's better than wild attention-seeking behavior. I do want to state, and I'm going to be very frank with you, that having a healthier outlook, I'm not saying I'm healthy, so to speak. I'm saying I have a healthier outlook, a healthier position in my life. Attention-seeking behavior, I think it can be used wisely to get people to notice something. I'm not going to lose that entirely. That's an aspect of my disorder that I love, the healthier part of that. I don't want to get rid of that because it's helped me and my family a lot in my life. But there are parts of it that are very ugly, and that I'm engaging less and less in. I'm still working through things, but demanding people's time, demanding people's attention. Outside of normal business hours, when they're in a professional setting, things like that. These were things I would engage in. I don't engage in those now, but I do miss the life of a drama queen. I do miss a lot of that because it made my life interesting in a way, not in a good way. But I miss it. And when I say that, I don't miss hurting people. I don't miss hurting myself. It's just weird because in the absence of that, I'm like, well, what is there to do? And in the absence of that, I'm focusing on my working through my trauma to the stuff that led to it. But missing it was a very important choice of words for me because in some ways having it, I was able to avoid things. I was able to avoid dealing with my life and dealing with the pain and suffering. But it came with such a great cost. It hurt others and it hurt myself. And that's where some of the elements I miss of it. I miss having that mask. I miss having that because now I have to deal with the rawness of my trauma. I have to work through and hold myself accountable for the rawness of feelings I have caused for others. But it's part of the healing process. It's part of working through it. And the missing part, well, it, like with anything else, it'll go by and I will realize that I'm glad I don't have those behaviors anymore. I will be at a point where I can say that. I have to rely on the fact that I am intelligent. I can put my emotional stuff in perspective. I am strong. I am important. I am talented. I need to build on that talent. I need to build more skills. I need to do more for myself and to some extent for others. I will get to that point where this will make all the sense in the world to me. I don't expect you to be inspired by anything. I'm not here to create inspiration or to tell people how to live their lives. This is just my own experience. I do want to be listened to, but only if you're willing to do so. I like expressing myself, and I find that these videos, if I am as frank as I can be and as responsibly without bringing too much onto my plate to deal with. They're quite therapeutic. It's like giving myself therapy because I'll listen to this and say, oh, why did I say that? Oh, why am I thinking that way? What can I do to fix that? So I do listen to my videos, but I'm also listening to a lot of your content out there. And I don't always agree with what some of you say. I will say that. I have extreme opinions about things, but I learn a lot from your content. I learn a lot from seeing your experiences, especially experiences with having relationships with people with personality disorders. Your experiences where you've been touched, where you've been touched figuratively by the wave of emotions of somebody with borderline, because it helps me to put that level of empathy more in a practical viewpoint for me. What I need to consider when I'm in these relationships. I also listen from my own family and from my friends, but I also want to see what the community is thinking. Not all of it is good. A lot of it is stereotypical hate speech on YouTube, but a lot of it, what's not hate speech is given your experiences of living with someone with this disease, with this disorder. You're very brave. You're very courageous to say, this is what I've been through. It's not your responsibility to teach me or to guide me. Maybe you're warning others, and I think that's okay. There should be, when you approach someone with a personality disorder, especially like me, have your boundaries set. The only reason why I made any progress in therapy is because my therapist and psychiatrist wasn't having it from me. They weren't going to deal with my temper tantrums. They weren't going to deal with my level of manipulation. Because I didn't get my way. They were 5 minutes late. I got pissed off. You know? They put me in my place. That's why they're my professionals for years. That's why I trust them. Because they're not going to let me just slide by. They're my professionals. So, stick to your guns. I'm telling you. You stick to your guns, you take care of yourselves, you keep those boundaries up. Don't take any crap from anybody. You don't need to be manipulated or badgered. Yes, it would be nice. I would love it if the world can understand where borderlines are coming from, because we do need a lot of love and tender care. I need that in my life. I need that love, that tender care and approach. I'm just not going to get it from anybody personally at this point. I get it from my professionals who stand their ground with me, but they don't have to deal with me 24 hours a day. We do need patience. We do need love. We do deserve to have that, but only if you're willing to give it. But I could never, ever say to you, don't express your experiences with people with borderline personality disorder. A lot of you have expressed it with such love and compassion. I don't find like anything really inspirational, but I really, really appreciate that. I really appreciate your honesty and integrity and your experiences, because whether you intend to educate or not, it's an eye-opener for me. It helps me as someone with the disorder see how these behaviors affect you as the person expressing your emotions, your life. I could never be angry or vengeful about that. How could I be? I thank you for that. That said, I'm going to close this video. I've been speaking for about an hour and a half now, and I hope this has been informative. If not, it's okay too. It's in the public space, and it's my contribution, and it's okay if it's just that. You all take exceptional care of yourselves, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Apply self-care to your lives. I mean that. Stick to your proverbial guns and keep those boundaries up. Don't allow anybody to break them down. There's no wall to tear down. You have a right to have your own limitations. You have a right to decide who you want in your life. Take care and all of my best to you. Until next time.